Steven Spielberg has undeniably made some of the most entertaining, memorable, and financially successful films of all time. But films like Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and Jurassic Park won't just be remembered as great pieces of filmmaking, they will also go down as some of the very first in the summer blockbuster genre. At the same time, most of those films were made 30 plus years ago, and since then, Spielberg really has evolved as a person and as an artist. Even a film like 2002's Minority Report, though thoroughly entertaining and masterfully crafted, did feel very different to the aforementioned films, if only because Spielberg at that point in his career wasn't the same filmmaker that had made the very first Indiana Jones, and he didn't try to be. He didn't attempt a style that he'd outgrown or consciously regress just to prove to moviegoers that he could still make a financially successful popcorn flick. And that's one of the reasons that that film worked so very well. And though I'm not as critical as many of films like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or Tintin, I will admit that those films did fall short for me, and the primary reason for that was it felt like he was attempting to regress. You can understand then why I was so very nervous when it was announced that Spielberg's next project would be Ernest Cline's Ready Player One, a novel that primarily cashed in on nostalgia and reminding us, the reader, just how much cooler things were in the 80s. And it certainly didn't help matters that the trailers gave me barely anything in regards to character or plot, choosing instead to showcase what seemed to be no more than a bunch of low-stakes CGI shenanigans. And, as it turned out, the first 15 to 20 minutes of the actual film did indeed feel like that was all we were going to get. Again, just a bunch of flashy, colorful, nostalgia-stuffed computer game challenges that a handful of underdeveloped characters would have to navigate their way through. And what's more, just like the trailer previewed, like a video game, the stakes were initially nearly non-existent. With that said, I should say, even while those first 20 minutes certainly weren't blowing me away, the texturing and lighting of these CG characters and environments not really attempting to break any new ground in their photorealism, I couldn't deny that Spielberg's eye for camera placement, movement, and editing were still on point. The action sequences were more than visually coherent. They were effectively structured and rapturously presented. Spielberg's use of handheld camera work in that virtual space did lend to it also a sense of weight and spontaneity. I also found it to be such a smart choice on the director's part, not attempting the uncanny valley, vainly trying to make the main characters' CG avatars photoreal. That same decision also allowed their looks and designs in that virtual space to, in colorful and fun ways, express something about the characters' personalities. And finally, it meant that when we did cut to the real world, the real faces and eyes that we beheld possessed that much more impact and connection. But even so, 20 minutes in, I still longed for more from Ready Player One, and fortunately, as the film continued steadily and deliberately, scene by scene, idea carefully constructed on top of idea, Spielberg and screenwriter Zach Penn did give me more, ultimately assembling the movie that I dared not hope for. Of course, avoiding spoilers, but part of that was accomplished through a number of very intelligent narrative and character decisions that brought some very real stakes to this world, both the one within the Oasis and the one without, which was no small task, this not being a Matrix situation where if you die in the game, you die in the real world. And not having that, they had to figure out how to make us care what occurred in that digital environment. And even while they initially simply exposited those stakes, their progressive visualization and the showing of real consequences within that fake world ended up working quite well. And once they'd done that, I really was able to invest in the drama and just plain fun of the Oasis challenges. The second of which was particularly and delightfully surprising, humorous, and visually memorable. In the end, though, what really made this film work for me was its passionately expressed, undeniably Spielbergian underlying theme. One that didn't feel like it was impersonally tacked on or merely some callback to an idea that was no longer relevant to a 71-year-old filmmaker. As the film closed, I could sincerely feel Spielberg through one of his characters speaking to us, and speaking to us about his life and his challenge to maintain a connection to reality, while so often needing to exist inside the fictional worlds of his films. And I only shared this story now because it really did perfectly connect in a very meta way to that message. So I had the absolute pleasure of being able to see Ready Player One at its world premiere at South by Southwest. And right as the film's climactic final battle was about to begin, the sound cut out. But rather than booing, we the audience as one begin clapping and cheering. Of course, they paused the film and did their best to figure out the issue and then rolled it back a few seconds to try again. And again, for a second time, the audio cut out. And again, we the audience cheered. And for the third failed attempt, we the audience actually began filling in the silence with our own sound effects, as one community just excited to finish the film together. And finally, minutes later, when the audio was finally fixed, we, the audience, let out the loudest cheer that we had for the entire film. And that was this film, and captured exactly what Spielberg was able to do with it. He was able to show us what a fake world, be it a video game or a film, can do for us in the real world. They can create these real connections and genuine communities. You could tell that this director was someone who had loved playing video games since the 1980s, and indeed had installed video arcades into his very own home. But at the same time, you could also see that over his 50 years of filmmaking, he had also come to understand the need for balance and to use those fake worlds to connect versus to isolate. So to all of you out there who are justifiably afraid that this film will only be for gamers or 1980s movie buffs, take it from this non-gamer and film fan who longs for far more than nostalgia that Ready Player One, despite a few shortcomings, really doesn't disappoint. And for all these reasons, I will give the film a 4 out of 5 and a heart. I would still love to know what you guys thought of the film though, so definitely comment below and let me know. Finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.